Hello, Be Positive Educators community. For those of you who might be tuning in for the first time, my name is Matt Leung, and I'm super excited for you to join us for our second Be Positive interview, the second in our interview series where we're welcoming and bringing in experts in education who are excited to share what they believe to be the importance and the relationship between positivity and education. Now, if you're joining us tonight for this interview live, or if you happen to be catching us in the future and you're watching this on replay, either way, jump in the comment box and let us know where you're coming from, where you teach, and what you teach. And we would love to be able to, both Joyce and I, interact with you over the course of the interview tonight. So tonight's interview is going to feature the wellness educator, Joyce Sunada. Now, I'm so excited to have Joyce here. Joyce has been a really key person in my professional journey the last several years, and just has been such an amazing friend and mentor, especially in navigating the professional speaking field, and especially with a slant on education. So I'm so pumped to have Joyce here. A little bit about Joyce for those of you who may not be familiar with Joyce's work. Joyce has over 30 years experience as an educator. During that time, she's been a teacher, an administrator, a university instructor, and a provincial leader who's helped create and support healthy school communities. Over her lengthy career, Joyce has had many positive and negative experiences, and she really believes and suggests that we embrace all of them. Even though she's always considered herself a positive person, Joyce crashed and burned herself out partway through her career. Joyce now realizes that there's more to being positive than simply standing up and being smiley all the time. Joyce, welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Matt, for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. So thank you.
Thank you. I know that at least for those of you who are watching from Calgary, an area that Joyce is a regular at Teachers Convention and other PD opportunities. So I'm sure that if you are coming as a teacher from the Calgary area, you're very familiar with Joyce. And those of you who might be seeing this outside of Calgary, very well-known speaker in the education world. So really stoked to have you here. So we've been talking a lot in this last week about positivity, how it matches this idea of wellness. And so I wanted to start this off tonight, Joyce, by asking you, how do you define positivity?
Yes, thank you for the challenge of defining positivity. And so I sat back and I reflected on it for a bit, Matt. And so I came up with, it's really the ability to experience and embrace what life has to offer us and what life throws at us. And then to trust that things will all work out. And it might not be in that moment of trepidation or challenge, but to have that inner knowing that life does work out. So that's my spin or my observation of what positivity means to me.
And I really like that, because I think when we think about the idea of trust and embracing the things that do happen, I guess a lot of the things that I hear people say is that the idea of being positive or optimistic is sometimes viewed as naive. But what I love about the way you describe it is embracing it and being trusting, is that understanding that things aren't always good, but that doesn't necessarily impair our ability to think positively.
Exactly. And if we try too hard to be up and happy or joyful all the time, that becomes exhausting. And that's something that I actually tried to do. And you crumble under the pressure of, okay, I've got to, I know this is really terrible, but it's okay. We'll get through it. That's not what I want educators especially to hear. That's not the definition. It's life is made up of many challenges, many beautiful, wonderful moments, and we can ebb and flow through them, but also that we need to take time to reflect and to actually feel them.
And the other thing that comes to mind for me when I hear the way you define positivity too is being willing to trust ourselves. I think is so important, and taking that time. I know you're a huge advocate of taking time for your own wellness and your own well-being, and I really believe as well that we don't have the opportunity to support our students, support our colleagues, unless we're in a position to support ourselves first.
Totally agree. Yeah, my tagline is, if you don't take time for your wellness, you'll be forced to take time for your illness. And when we're ill as educators and we're out of school, then we're not able to make an impact. So really important that we take care of ourselves so that we're available to help positively impact the future generations that we're working with.
And I think that that really rubs off on the students that we work with as well. So that leads us really great into our next question. So with that being at the forefront of all the work that you do and the speaking that you do to support teachers, how do you practice being positive?
That, well, moment to moment, let me tell you. But what I've learned, and I've got a few years on you, Matt, and maybe a few years on many of our listeners, is over the years is to really allow myself to feel what's uncomfortable. It's so easy to go, oh, this is awesome, and this is joyful, and this is fun, and embrace those and allow those feelings and to share those with others. And what I've also discovered is when things aren't going well, is to just to be still and to
Mm.
feel the hurt or to feel the disappointment or to feel the exhaustion or to feel the overwhelm, which are, emotions that I know teachers are experiencing right now. And just go, this is our human experience. And allowing each of those motions to ebb and flow and to feel them. And what I've discovered in that is that they will dissipate sooner and we'll be able to, let's say, carry on. But if you and I are pushing against each other, like, we're not going to give up, we're just going to keep pushing. So if I'm going to try and push away that this is overwhelming and I can't stand it, I'm going to push away, you know it's going to be a battle. Whereas if we go, okay, let it just, maybe knock me down, maybe even have a nap or step out into the great outdoors for a moment, embrace it, and then have that ability to come back in even stronger.
Yeah.
I hope that. What are you hearing me say when I say that?
Yeah,
Just
no, what really resonates with me is that this idea of practicing being positive means that we have to take steps that are within our own control.
Mhm.
And I think so much of the time, and especially in education, we rely on this notion that our ability to be positive is going to be decided by other people, whether it's our administrators or our district or the governments that we are teaching within, these sorts of things. And what I really hear you say is by taking that time for your own wellness, whether it's going outside or just sitting and acknowledging your feelings, these are all things that are within our own control, which I think is a key piece that we often don't necessarily reflect on when we think on being positive.
Well, and I just want to expand on the control piece for a moment, if I may. There was a young teacher early in COVID, maybe it was about May 2020. I get a call and he's very frustrated. The students aren't returning the work. The parents he felt weren't supporting the students and just so frustrated. And so we sat for a moment and I said, okay, so what's in your control? Well, creating the lessons as best, to the best of his ability, giving the assignments and communicating that to the parents. And then what was in his influence? Well, following up with the parents, following up with the students, encouraging, setting boundaries, deadlines. And then that third circle is what's not in your control. And so, we had a good laugh, but I said, what's not in your control is driving over to their house, sitting at their kitchen table and doing the work with them. That's not. And when we focus on what's in our control, what we can do, that energizes us because we feel like, okay, we've got this. And when we let go of what's not in our control, that also energizes us. But if we try and hang on to what's not in our control and we really, complain and get sucked into it, it just sucks us in and sucks the life out of us. So control is a big thing, and it might be a tiny little thing. And I think that's why early in COVID, people were sorting out drawers or, cleaning out their closets because that was in our control, right? And so that provides us some optimism, some positiveness. It's like, okay, there are things that I can control, and to let go of what I can't.
Yes. And before the call, or before we went live, you and I were talking a little bit about the idea of experiencing success. And I think that this all goes hand in hand. When we feel that we have some measure of control, we experience a more success because we're in control of our circumstances. And then coming back to your definition of positivity, it becomes much easier to trust in the things that we can control when we recognize what those components of our work are. And I think that makes a huge difference.
And it does build that confidence. And we also talked about confidence and competence. Both Matt and I have literacy, physical literacy backgrounds. And when you're feeling confident, or you're competent, and then you're feeling confident, the two kind of rise and help to motivate you. So it was so interesting how we discovered that's intertwined in positivity as well.
Yes, it's amazing how frequently some of these skills that we as educators use to try to instill among children reflect back into our own practice. It happens real often, it feels like.
It does. And I say that the classroom is simply a microcosm of society. So that little group of students, think back to your grade 4 days, you go to your boardroom and now you've got the class clown, you've got the person on your staff that gets every assignment done, and maybe the person that never gets the assignment done. And so just those characteristics, we see them throughout life. And so as educators, if we can go, okay, if I'm expecting this of my students, how can I participate and ensure that I'm, learning and walking the talk as well?
Definitely. No, I completely agree. A lot of what I hear teachers share with me, sometimes often begrudgingly, is, when I speak about the importance of being positive, they say, well, that's great, but when do you want us to do it, right? When do you want us to do this when we have so many other parts and aspects of our work that compete for our time? And so what I'm curious about is if you can, share either specific or general time when being positive made a tangible difference in the work that you did, when it actually meant something, when it actually resulted in a big difference and big impact.
Okay, I think this is a good example. So I was an assistant principal, and it was shortly before I burned myself out. So there's a history of burning myself out, and maybe we'll get into that or not. But there was a young fellow, I'm going to call him Billy Bob, and Billy Bob was frequently in trouble, and I was feeling less than positive. And one of the tasks that we might assign our students when they were less than, when they were misbehaving, is to sweep the gymnasium floor. And so I went in there, and of course, my positive, like, it stems from where I'm coming from, right? And I was annoyed with Billy Bob. I'm annoyed with myself. I'm not being very positive at this point. And I'm like, Billy boy, like, come on, Billy Bob. Sorry, I've changed his name. I'm like, Billy Bob, like, come on, like, you know better than that. Like, are you gonna spend the rest of your life like sweeping floors or whatever? And I was being totally negative, as you can hear. And Billy Bob looks up at me and he goes, Miss Sunada, my dad's a janitor. Like, what's wrong with that? And I'm just like, and so in that moment, I was able to see the hurt I've caused because of my own negativity. And then I was able to go, you're right. I am so sorry. I just insulted your dad, your family, our caretaker here at the school. I said, I'm proud of you. Like, okay, let's turn it around. And so I think that's a snippet of recognizing my negativity and being slapped in the face in a good way. I needed that. Just his little eyes. It's like, well, what's wrong with that? And me going, oh, how can I be more compassionate to this student and be more positive? So that's an example. It's embarrassing to share, and it's real. So there you go.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you're right. I think, I hear things like self-awareness, and, I think to myself, how much different of a mental space we allow ourselves to sit in when we choose to be positive. I feel like it just offers us so many different opportunities for compassion, as you said, but also empathy and just broadening our own horizons when we're willing to give a person or a situation or a student or an administrator the benefit of the doubt, instead of assuming the worst case scenario, giving them the opportunity to expand our perspective on what could be the narrative, what could be the story that's going on in that situation. I think we afford ourselves a better chance to do that by being positive.
It was a good lesson. And I remained positive by taking that away the next time I talked to other students. And at the end of the year, I thanked him for having the courage to say, hey, what's wrong with that? And he wasn't
Mm.
belligerent or anything. He was being curious and yeah, called me out on it very nicely.
That's kids are amazing. You alluded to it a little bit, and so I'd love to dive in. You alluded to your experience with burnout, and I know it's a big part of your journey and a big part of what brought you to the stage as a speaker. And so I'm really curious to hear a little bit more. And this is a little bit off script from what we had chatted about that we are going to go into, but I'm curious, for teachers that watch this, either watching this live with us or maybe in the future, who are feeling just so weighed down, so burnt out by everything that's happened in the last year. And no doubt this last year has been one of the most difficult ever to be an educator. From your experience lifting yourself and coming out of that state of burnout, were there some key signposts, I guess, along the way that, some of the people watching might be able to say, okay, this is kind of my next step. This is the next foot I put forward.
When you mean signposts, is that I was going down a dark path? Like the
Either
warning?
the path that you were going down in the warning signs, or maybe just on the way back up. Either way, whichever way you'd like to
Okay.
share.
So I'll just do three warning signs. Is just living at a frenetic pace, is just like constantly on the go. And even if I was talking to you back then, I'd be like, there'd be these physical signs, and that was just representative of kind of a frenetic pace up here. There was lots of memory loss where at times I couldn't remember what I was supposed to be doing. And, I'd write things on my hands. And then the third sign spiraling down was a total feeling of hopelessness. Is like, okay, I got nothing. I'm not even looking forward to tomorrow or the next day. And so those are really, if there's things that are just so out of your character that you start to get worried about yourself, flags. You got to stop and you've got to talk to somebody. My administrator actually picked up the phone and connected me to one of the counselors and said, Joyce, you need to talk to them. That gave me the courage to then help some of my teachers later in my career and go, I'm seeing the same thing. Here you go. You need to talk to them. And people can contact me if you want to have a conversation. If that's how you're feeling, I am totally happy to share, more details if you like. The coming out, that's very interesting, Matt. I was reflecting on that today, and pieces that are being publicized now is like get outside, take time for yourself, breathing. Those pieces are exactly what I did coming out of my burnout and my depression. So I was diagnosed with depression and adrenal fatigue. And I was sent on a year medical leave. So I wasn't in the classroom at all. And during that time here in Calgary, we live not far from Elbow Falls, a beautiful place in the foothills. And I was just drawn to drive out there by myself and just sit by the falls. And that for me was it was so healing. And at the time I didn't recognize it. But now when I walk in Fish Creek and I hear the water, I can just go, I remember that was so healing. So if we can implement those practices now, if we're feeling on edge, it helps to fuel our positivity. It helps to fuel our wellness. Also connecting to friends and family. I was so embarrassed when I was diagnosed with depression and the doctor said, no, we need to put you on a medical leave. I was so scared even to call my family. And eventually, I pick up the phone and go, I was diagnosed with depression and I'm on a leave. And the first things out of their mouth is, hey, how can we support you? How can we help you? And just knowing that other people want to support and help you. That's very, very important. And so I'm seeing some parallels as to being in COVID, get outside, connect with people, take good care of your wellness, as to when I was burning myself out in 2006 when we had no clue what COVID was. So that's just being aware of how to support myself. And it was quite accidental. And now looking back, it's like, well, of course, those were the pieces that needed to happen. And so trusting, again, there's that word trust, our intuition, and just going, I was just drawn to go there. I didn't go, oh, I need to go to the mountains to heal myself. No, it's just like, oh, I had this sense that I need to go there. So I feel a piece of that intuition is something that we need to not need, is something to just be aware of as well.
And what I love in that story that you shared is the minute that you start listening to that intuition, I guess, let me back up. I think it's very difficult to listen to our intuition when we're in that state of feeling frantic or feeling hopeless. It's very difficult, and that trust really isn't there. And so even when we can acknowledge that, hey, I've got this little voice inside of me that I need to recognize and listen to, I think just that act of listening to that voice, listening to ourselves and our intuition, is such a key first step to building ourselves back up. And the other piece that resonates so strongly with me is staying connected to the people that are important in our life. I think that, and again, another great parallel with COVID, there's so much perception of guilt and shaming that occurs from the world around us when we feel that we're not at our best. We feel that if we're not at our best, that we can't share any of ourself with others.
Mhm.
When reality, the way that we are able to get back to our best is by relying on the people that care about us and support us and to build us back up. So it's trusting in ourselves, it's trusting in the people in our worlds that care about us, and just being ready to listen. I think that's amazing.
And I'm just going to point out, so our best in 2019 might have been here, and our best in 2020 might be here. So just to recognize your best is your best on any given day, and embrace that and go, okay, that's the best I could do today. Similar to what we would do to the students. Often we're just like, okay, buddy, thanks. That's, I appreciate your best effort for today. And to show that loving compassion for ourselves as well as our students, but first for ourselves.
Yes, and thank you for pointing that out, because when I say best, I don't mean perfect. And I think this is such an important distinction for educators. I like to say, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be positive or B plus, like the grade. We don't have to be perfect, and our best might look different from day to day. I think that's so important to recognize. Absolutely wonderful. Just to start to wrap things up and bring things to a close, I'm curious now, given everything we've talked about the importance of trusting yourself, listening to your intuition, maybe understanding what some of the red flags are that might come up when we're starting to really be impacted by things going on around us. If you had one wish, Joyce, one wish that every single teacher watching this, either tonight live or into the future, one wish for something that they would do tomorrow when they go to work to focus on some of these things we've been talking about tonight, what would it be?
Okay, I wasn't quite expecting that question. You talked okay. I really wish each and every teacher would be themselves. And I just want to give you a little bit is a child's education in Alberta is K to 12. And so that's 13 years. And so you, beautiful, amazing teacher, when you have that child, if you can be you as part of the village that's going to help to educate this child or these children and contribute what you have to contribute, that's enough, because you are whole, complete, and perfect exactly as you are, who you are. And so rather than saying, I wish anyone to do something. I just wish that we all had the freedom to be ourselves and contribute what we can in that given moment. And again, trust and allow the village to help to raise those children.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Joyce. And once again, on behalf of all of the teachers that are going to get the chance to see this and experience this video again, whether tonight or into the future, thank you, Joyce, for sharing your wisdom and your wellness journey with us. It's just so wonderful. I'm grateful to get to call you a friend and a mentor. And so thank you for coming and sharing your brilliance with us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for trusting me. And yes, be awesome. Be awesome.
I love it. So once again, everybody, for those of you that are watching this either live or on replay, this is Be Positive Educators. We are going to be continuing to come live with various education experts over the coming weeks and months. So please, if you haven't already, feel free to like this Facebook page, maybe post a question or comment or thought that you've been having about this idea of positivity in the school place. I'd also love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel at Be Positive Educators or follow us on Instagram, again, at Be Positive Educators. And once again, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be positive. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful Sunday and a fantastic week back at school whenever you're watching this. Take care.
Bye.